Hey everyone, welcome back to Yvonne Wakefield's YouTube channel and podcast, where I read from Babe in the Woods, Building a Life One Log at a Time, the first in a series of 3 books, Babe in the Woods, Self-Portrait, and Path of Totality, where I talk about this log cabin I built, where I keep going to. I still own it. In fact, I was there last weekend. And the 2 weekends before I was there, the spring flowers were starting to come up. Last weekend, I got there on a Wednesday night. I woke up on a Thursday morning to 2 inches of fresh snow. And I didn't know if I was going to get out. I had an appointment for an interview somewhere, so I had to make sure I didn't slide off the road. And snow also figures into chapter 18. Testosterone and Tillamook cheese. It's 11 pages, so if you need to get your crochet out, you need to get your knitting or your whittling, it's going to be a little bit longer chapter. But I want to recap 17, hang on to it. I talked about learning to use tools and tools that didn't fit me. And then my siblings show up and kind of gives you the backstory of how I ended up on a wilderness mountainside building a log cabin. So let me take a sip of my hydration beverage. And here we go. Chapter 18, Testosterone and Tillamook cheese. Everything here involves demanding physical outlay. When not working, I walk everywhere and burn off every calorie I take in. Throughout the workday, I drink a shake of Taster's Choice powdered milk, carob, honey mixed with cold creek water inside a mason jar. I drink Taster's Choice from sunup to sunset, so much I would buy stock in the company if I hadn't lost my faith in the market. Even though I'm eating more than ever before, by June I've lost all the weight I could afford to lose and really liked the way my body looked. Sculpted, brown, solidly defined. The only mirrors on this mountainside are in a creek pool or stuck to a truck. Naturally, I saw myself revealed through the discipline of hard work, abs, pecs, biceps, shoulders taut as sinew. I was ripped. I also had not had a period for over 2 months and figured, just like women who live together synchronize their menstrual cycles, being around men most of the time changed my estrogen to testosterone. 3 days before the official start of summer, it snows. So that would be like June 21st. And the first wall log is set. Laying up logs in any weather is precise, demanding, and dangerous work as the walls grow higher. Doing so in the snow is a bitch. Before it is notched and spiked down, each 300-plus pound log has to be jostled into place. I stand back and watch Jim and Brad do this, and then scribe, saw, axe out the wedges to chisel a notch to fit. I watch from the periphery, busy with busy work as they complete important work. After an hour of tidying up the site, shivering in snow that turns to rain, I say, I want to help. That will really slow us down, Brad says, wiping a chisel on his wet jeans. Jim says, go get your axe. As he whisks freezing rain from his eyebrows, I climb up, straddle the log, and work on finishing Jim's notch. Under his watchful eye, I flay away, missing the marks again and again, ultimately chopping too deep. My first attempt must be made level with wedges of wood. Before a notch is cut, it must be marked. We use a protractor to pencil a duplicate contour of the log beneath the one we notched. The How to Build Log Cabin book said to use a scribe. Jim said a protractor would work just as fine. I purchased one at the variety store next to Chester's. It was the kind I'd used in high school to draw circles and color them in instead of measuring radius, circumference, and following geometry lessons way over my head. The half-pint pencil that came with the tin protractor needed sharpening after each use because the log belly was soft and wet, and to make it line visible meant pushing that nib in hard. After the log is marked, it is rolled over and blocked, then dogged down with a board and 16 penny nails. Starting in the middle, the notch is serrated with a chainsaw, cutting a deep-toothed grin. The teeth are knocked out with an axe. The U-shape is chiseled smooth, the log rolled over to fit tight against the one below. Brad followed Jim's lead, and he took to notching as easy as eating. I was just as hungry to master the skills, but a loser when it first came to learning. My second attempt to measure and cut a notch was a long, drawn-out process, also culminating in a botched mess. I flayed and hacked and chiseled away until I thought I'd carved out a gripping fit. Jim and Brad only offered a hand when I said, "Ready." Then we rolled my log over to see if a finger-width gap. We rolled and dogged it down again. The icy rain wasn't above lending a helping hand and hindered my work by making every surface and contact slippery as I cut out and cursed that log. "Shit," I said first under my breath, then out loud when the log did not fit the second or the third time it was rolled over. On the fourth time I yelled, "Get away," and I kicked the log I'd wasted off the foundation that wasn't rising to my occasion. It hit the ground with a hollow sound, mimicking the ruin I also felt. We break for lunch, huddled under spears of sleet under the pine tree, our breath frosted, passing jars, holding back words. I fill a mug with peanut butter, honey, raisins, and cheese. Stir everything together and eat as fast as I can, hoping it will stick to my frozen ribs. Lunch conversation is reduced to sodden sighs and grunts. I keep my back to the ruined log. After lunch, Jim and Brad resume notching. When they are through, I climb up and drill a hole into the top log. The bit clogs with wet sawdust. Drilling is slow. When a hole is about 4 inches, I hang the brace and bit on my carpenter's belt, purchased on my last trip to JCPenney, and yell, "Hand me the sledge." I do not say please. Jim hands up his 12-pound sledgehammer. I grip it in the middle and hammer down a 12-inch long piece of 3/4-inch rebar through the top log, the goal to pierce the log below with rebar staves spaced 2 feet apart. It only takes a minute for the sledge to wimp out my wrists. I finish pounding that first piece of rebar with the 24-inch waffle-faced Craftsman hammer that I also bought at JCPenney for Brad to use. It is still much heavier than the 18-ounce hammer I bought for myself, but lighter than the sledge and requires more than a few blows it would take the men. Still, that simple success with a smaller tool enables me to get the big job done. Plain rain has replaced icy rain and is coming down hard. We call it a day. Brad goes up to his camp without a word. I walk down the road with Jim. Usually I'm chatty. Now I just feel spent, but spark up a bit when Jim says, You worked like a good day, boss, and you worked like a man." "Hey, wait up." Brad lumbers down the road, his breath a cloud overhead, pack on his back. He's had a change of heart, promises to return. It's just that he has decided to pay a visit to his girl. He will drive to the highway with Jim and from there hitchhike to Nebraska. Blindsided by his sudden decision, I hold my tongue. I didn't want to come off rattled in the eyes of these men who I've come to depend on and who I want to see me as invulnerable. I thought Brad was here to stay until the cabin was finished. At least that was the deal we'd made when he decided working with me was sweeter than working for my brother. Maybe all my cursing that day sent him packing, or maybe it was day after day of working in the rain and eating peanut butter. "Want me to bring anything back?" he asks. Not knowing what Nebraska has to offer, I reply, "Just yourself." "When do you plan on returning?" "Maybe 10 days, maybe 2 weeks, maybe longer. It depends," he says, shifting his pack. Since depends seems like a loaded word, I do not ask for definition. I walk with them down the road where we part above my campsite. Jim, I know I'll see tomorrow. Brad, I'm not sure I'll ever see again, despite his vague assurance that his love devotion won't take precedence over his volunteer work with me. He has left his tent in the little meadow, though, marking a place for his return. On the narrow footpath leading down to camp, I turn and look over my shoulder just as their heads bob out of sight. I lean my poleaxe against a stump. I'd planned to sharpen it that night, but I can't wait. I'm tired, wet, undone by Brad's unexpected departure, knowing at least my axe will be there in the morning to help me, dull as it is. The fly tarp has sagged and the tent has leaked. I unzip the flap and kneel in the rain pool that drains into a river, creating a lake under the foam mattress. I take off my 2 damp shirts to soak up the water, wring them out the flap, and repeat the process. I don't even bother messing around with the fire. The surest warmth around is pulled from the pack, a pair of clean but clammy jeans, turtleneck, and brown wool sweater. I put them on, crawl into the bag, so cold I cannot generate body heat, even wrapped around a cat. Every muscle I never even knew I had before hurts. I may work like a man, according to Jim, but I ache like a little girl. On this Oregon mountainside, the seasons, like the weather, are as predictable as new friends. They can change in a flash. The only sure thing to count on is that the sun will rise, and after a long day of using it, an axe needs sharpening. The morning after Brad leaves, I wake up before dawn. Next to the campfire pit is a plastic tarp. Underneath is a dry pile of tinder, pitch, and kindling. I work by feel to get a fire going with 1 match, feeding it with the shavings I scrape off a dry log with a dull axe blade. Within minutes, flame and sunrise together, dry maple leaf bright. Because the rain and snow of the day before, I'd hoisted my food catch from the creek to the bank. The added precipitation would cause the flow to peak around 2 a.m., enough of a rise to wash the wooden box downstream. By the time I've returned from the creek, the campfire and sunrise have choreographed into the same bright outlook. I place a half-eaten brick of Tillamook cheese and 1 apple on a fireside stump, and go get my footlocker for a knife. During the seconds it's taken me to return, the cheese has begun its own weird dance. The fire-warmed, waxy wrapping is pulsating like a dress-clad midget moving to a freestyle polka beat. I stab the cheese with the fire-poking stick, hold it over the fire, and for a closer look, the T in Tillamook budges. The OOs bump like Barbie doll breasts, and the remaining vowels and consonants join in for an alphabet conga. I peel back the waxy flap, and ants cascade out like unstrung black pearls, dropping into the fire and sizzle. I top the wrapping into the pit where it melts, then bursts into a flaming puddle. Persistent ants continue to burrow into the naked cheese, and I impale each one on the end of my favorite pocket knife, flicking their back carcasses into space. I scrape off the remaining ant bits, slice the cheese, and eat it along with soggy Triscuits. The apple is just fine. After 2 more cups of Taster's Choice, I'm ready to face the day. It is 7:30, an hour before Jim would arrive for work. The morning already warm enough to wear cutoffs, I fill 1 back pocket with kibble. In the other, I tuck an old bandana and hike to the site. It seems strange not to have Brad around, but good at the same time to be my own boss again. Before Jim's arrives, I plan to burn a brush pile nearly as high as the smallest Giza pyramid. I've been adding to it for over a month. With the ground soaked from the previous day's rain, it's safe to torch that sucker. After breakfast, Tamarack settles in for a catnap under the tarp. Careful not to disturb him, I extract a metal can of pure mineral spirits, stowed there to clean pitch from flesh and tools. I scale the piney pyramid, pouring out the can on my descent, then wiping my hands on the bandana, always in my pocket and handy in a pinch to blow a nose, blot a sweaty brow, twist into a tourniquet, or smooth into a picnic placemat. I wrap the bandana around a long stick, douse it with chainsaw gasoline, sprinkle more on the pile, scale it, strike a match to the tip, and then torch down. Nothing at first, then a sudden whoosh, muffled boom, and a ball of fire blows me backward, and I tumble onto the tarp. Recovering from that abrupt landing, I discover my eyebrows singed and calf impaled by that rusted blue bow saw. Punctures shaped like the teeth that made them well fast with blood, like sap from a fresh-cut log. I know only time will heal these wounds, but there is rust involved, and I can't remember if I'm current on tetanus and decide as flames grow high, as a precaution against lockjaw, it's a good idea to get a shot in town. I throw bucket after bucket of water straight into the fire until it smolders and break apart the brush and douse it until it's cold. This takes a while as each bucket is drawn from the creek below. By then, the bleeding has slowed and dry blood and scum cover my leg, which I won't wash for fear of starting the bleeding back up again. At camp, I change from cutoffs to khaki capris, then start down the road, shouldering a day pack filled with library books and a clean white Oxford shirt. Along the way, I meet Jim. He stops, yanks on the emergency brake. "Thought we were working today," he says, turning off the ignition. "I thought so too," I reply, and turn around. "See?" I point to the back of my leg. Jim takes one look and agrees. Tetanus shot won't hurt as much as what you've done to yourself already. In the middle of the road, we make plans. Jim will measure, saw, and hammer studs into the seal logs until I return. He can do it without my help. The truth is, he can do just about anything without my help. I'll be back by noon. Get a 50-pound box of 20-penny spikes. Just bring up a handful, leave the box by the roadside. I'll pick them up when I come to work tomorrow. Jim rides up to the building site, and I hike down to the meadow, start the gremlin, and head into town. The Marlboro doctor is on call and not surprised to see me sitting in the emergency room. "What can I do for you today, sweetheart?" He sucks a toothpick between his snooth-stained lips. I buttoned up my white blouse to appear more presentable. Still, I'm too embarrassed to show him my bloody leg because it is also black with soot and pitch. I stand up, turn around, and point anyway. "Woo-wee! That saw went clean into your hide." He bends over for a closer look. "Wounds like that are like dog bites. No use stitching them. Just keep them clean." The doctor makes good on his word. Sponges on peroxide that stings as bad as turpentine. He swabs out each puncture with a Q-tip with antibiotic salve. "Here, you can keep it." He hands me the used tube, then presses a sterile piece of gauze over the wound and tapes it around my calf. "Keep it clean and covered for a few days till the skin heals closed. I'll be back in a minute with that shot." In the time he's gone, I've worked up the courage to ask him about my non-periods. "That's really not my specialty," he says. And I'm relieved because I really don't want to talk to this nice cowboy doctor about a damned menstrual flow. But you're in luck. The gynecologist is in town today. I'll see what I can do. I'm still rubbing my arm from the tetanus shot when he returns. "They made an appointment for you to see him at 2. "Thank you," I say. "Anytime," he says. I go to pay my bill. "Nice to see you again," the receptionist says. As I write out a check, I'm thinking this hospital is like a good friend. It's there for me whenever I'm hurting, but I pay the price for our relationship. While I'm clumsily learning the ropes of building in the wilderness, I enjoy the security of a medical facility, even though I don't want to get used to regular visits. Outside the hospital, this new friend I don't want to depend on, I look down on the town and plan on how to fill 2 hours between now and my appointment. Since arriving in April, I've honed a going-to-town schedule. First stop is the laundromat west of Main Street, where there is also a pay shower. While clothes are washing, I exchange books at the library in Canyon City, then return to the laundromat. Where the clothes are drying, I take a shower. The clean, folded clothes are layered over library books packed down with groceries purchased at Chester's while my long hair drip dries in the aisles. On this town trip, I planned only an emergency room visit and a library trip, carried only a knapsack, so my routine varied. Because of my appointment with a gynecologist, I have time to kill and decide to take a shower despite my lack of towel, soap, or shampoo. At the laundromat, I buy a miniature box of Irish soap from the vending machine. In the shower behind the dryers, I insert more quarters, work the soap flakes into slimy lather to loosen the sap and dirt on my legs and upper chest. The new hospital bandage also goes the way of this grind. 2 bits gets me thoroughly scrubbed and rinsed in hot water that I do not have to haul and heat. I toss the soggy gauze into the trash, towel off with my white shirt, and blot my calf with toilet tissue. My hair blow dries on the drive to the hardware store, only minutes away, and I comb it out with my fingers. No thanks, I'll do it. I heft and carry the 50-pound box of galvanized spikes from the hardware checkout counter and place it in the back of the gremlin and hope Jim doesn't need them soon. There's no way of letting him know I won't be back with the spikes by noon. With nearly 2 hours left before my appointment, I go to Chester's and buy a new block of Tillamook cheese, put it into the day pack, and drive to the heart of town 3 blocks away. It's already 90 degrees, and there is the sweet smell of new haying, diesel from trucks hauling fresh-cut old growth straight through town on long beds. A gooseneck horse trailer idles at the only stoplight. Hooves clump against the metal floor. Horsetails swish away flies. Why would anyone ever want to leave this place, I think. The light turns green. I pull over in the shade of Len's drugstore, park, and walk down Main Street. The lunch crowd is settling down behind the plate glass window to plates of the day's special. Looks like Emery's usual chicken fried steak, mashed potatoes and gravy, and a side dish of peas. I'm not that hungry enough to go inside, even if just to check in with Emery. All that time in the mountain is turning me wild. Sitting in a restaurant when the sun is shining would make me feel caged. I drive to the library in Canyon City, the county seat, once a prosperous gold mining hub with bars and restaurants, assay office, and places where coal miners could find warmth and more. Today, Canyon City is a tidy remnant of its former self, with manicured parks and an empty streets, a courthouse built from stone, and the only library in this vast country. This place is my mother lode. The air conditioning in the library is at first welcoming, but then too cold. I pull my Oxford over the flimsy tank and thumb through a stack of unbound manuscripts, one in particular, a faded typed college paper I've scanned before. Today, I want to check it out and read more about the man named John Day. It is reference material only, says the librarian with white hair and a marginal smile. Can't be checked out. With some finagling, I convince her to let me have the manuscript for 1 hour and leave my driver's license as collateral. Just make sure it comes back clean, she says through gritted teeth. Yes, ma'am, I say. Outside, I remove my blouse. Within walking distance of the library is a mom-and-pop burger stand. The sun is getting hotter by the minute, and I appreciate the shade of the cottonwood tree branching over the order window. Settling my back against a tree, a greasy fishwitch and large root beer beside me, I turn the pages of the most comprehensive biography I've yet to read about John Day, the man. By the time I finished reading this manuscript typed assignment, I've learned some new things and discovered enough typos and misspellings to wonder how this college thesis earned an A-. Thank you. I return the manuscript to the librarian, hold up my hands, clean. I retrieve my driver's license, check out some new books, and then use the public restroom to freshen up before my appointment with a man who earns a living exploring caves. Dr. Pruitt's office just down from the hospital. There are not enough ailing vaginas around John Day to make it profitable for Dr. Pruitt to establish a practice here. So he, like other specialists, travels between towns, then returns to his home office in Bend, where there are enough dysfunctional female privates to boot. In the sterile waiting room, I feel out of my element and button my blouse to the neck. Shouldn't I be half naked, dinking around with logs, or at least splashing in the creek, I think? A receptionist sitting behind frosted glass hands me a clipboard with forms. I write a post office box number in the space for home address and leave blank the sections that ask for my insurance company, home phone number, and whom to contact in case of an emergency. The receptionist doubles as a nurse and leads me into an examination room. Take off everything below your waist, she says, handing me a paper gown. Even my socks? I ask. She looks down at the pitchy wool socks rimming the ankles of my buttered Reichley boots, scrunches her nose. Yes. I undress, then pull the toilet paper off my leg. Dr. Pruitt has a Gomer Pyle smile and a military crew cut. He looks young enough, I think. He should still be in medical school. When he enters the examination room, I hold the paper gown close around my waist as if I'm a gift, unwilling to be unwrapped. I present my symptoms, including fainting, which before beginning a log cabin, I'd done only once before, right before receiving my first Holy Communion. I was revived and given orange juice in time to queue with other budding baby brides of Christ. Must be the result of a recent bout with Rocky Mountain spotted fever, I informed the doctor. He nods uncommittally, uninterested in my fainting diagnosis. Instead, he tells me, lie down, put your feet in these stirrups. He points to the stainless steel cup holders at the end of the table. Now, just relax and spread your legs, Dr. Pruitt says with less enthusiasm than the county librarian. He shoves a cold metal spectrum, then his Vaseline-coated fingers inside of me. Looks like something bit you. He nods at my leg. Does this hurt? Dr. Pruitt turns his eyes to the ceiling as he probes his fingers deeper and harder, pressing down on my abdomen with his other hand. Even if my vagina and uterus were big as a bathtub, how could this not hurt? Yes, I answer, and he presses and pushes harder. When he is through, he washes his hands and writes out a prescription. Might be the cold water you bathe in. I've seen cold water do the same things to sheep, says the doctor, and I wish I'd never told him where and how I live. He hands me the paper script for pills I have never heard of before. These might get you flowing again, he says. If not, come back and see me in 4 or 5 weeks. With pleasure, I do not say, but instead ask him for a piece of clean gauze and tape to cover my leg. I hike back up the mountain and huff with a cheese brick, a white shirt, library books, a bunch of spike, and a bottle of pills. At my campsite, I change from chinos into dirty cutoffs, take a big fistful of spikes from the pack, and leave it against the log. In the day still warming. Jim is hammering in studs with 16-penny nails, his back towards me as I approach. Hootie, I yell, and he turns around, axe poised. Here. I hold out the spikes. What'd the doctor say? Jim looks down at my bandaged leg. Just keep it clean. I don't mention the other doctor's visit because it makes me feel kind of dirty, I say. In my absence, Jim has tacked the studs and left them for me to spike. Hit him in an angle like this, Jim uses his sledge to drive a 20-penny at a slant so the square end draws close. I pick up my lighter waffle-faced hammer and wail away. After the doctor's visit, it feels good to hit something really hard. After Jim leaves for the day, I keep pounding long after all the studs are in place. Back at camp, I build a fire and prepare to relax with a new book. When I remove the news checkout, I discover the Tillamook loaf is like Play-Doh in a greasy sack at the bottom of the pack. Its orange, waxy covering melted and wicked into my white shirt. I squeezed the son of Blob back into semblance of its former angular loaf. I soaked the shirt in a bucket of warm water, then scrub it with Castile soap. Still, the light orange stain penetrates the front, back, and left sleeve of my only white going-to-town shirt. I hang it to dry on a tent rope. Fortunately, the library books are on top of the cheese. Everything below them is greasy. Pocket knife, compass, the bottle of pills. I can only make out VONNE and TERONE. The rest of the prescription label, like my name, smeared illegibly. In the last light of day by the fire, I read part of the label. The font spared the melted cheese. Take 1 a day. The directions on this new prescription do not specify what time of day. Might as well get started, I think. I pop the first pill and wish I had something stronger than cold camp coffee to wash it down. The pills, I assume, imagining the greased out letters are TESTOS. Before the legible TERONE are male hormones, maybe just the yang I need to balance my yin, get the feminine side of my towel flowing. In the stack of new library books is Portrait of a Marriage by Nigel Nicholson. This is the author's account of his mother, Rita Sackville West, a prominent English socialite in the Bloomsbury heyday. In one passage excerpted from her diary, Vita writes, I advance, therefore, the perfectly accepted theory that cases of dual personality do exist, in which the feminine and the masculine elements alternately preponderate. Maybe this is why I need those pills, I think. She continues to pontificate in sentences that exceed 70 words and more, long enough to derail me into thinking about women and sheep. They both have uteruses and a vagina, both bleed and bleat, which makes me wonder if I shouldn't have gone to a veterinarian instead of a gynecologist who prescribed male hormones to a woman. I close the book on Vita. Undressing inside the tent by Coleman light, I see that my body hasn't changed a bit by that pill, so apparently it is not fast-acting. My breasts are still perky, my mons pubis a mound of soft fur that begs a pet. Maybe it takes more time for the testosterone to kick in. As I slide my injured leg into the sleeping bag, I do, however, feel something extraordinary. I remove it and see fresh blood on my foot and ankle, and it's not coming from the bow-saw wound. I pull the Coleman close and the sleeping bag open to determine the mess of fur, entrails, and bone is a freshly eviscerated baby rabbit resting at the head of a sleeping kitten from hell. Tamarack does not protest when I pick him up and place him outside the tent. I scoop up the carnage with some bark chunks and throw it into the fire pit outside. The stained white shirt on the tent rope is moist enough to wipe away gore from my leg and sleeping bag. I turn the bag inside out, get in, and find it will not zip. Still, it will be more comfortable than the grisly alternative. By now, too distracted by the immediate and altogether day's events and wired by caffeine and male hormones, I decide to journal. On the apple crate that serves as a reading nightstand is a notebook. I uncap the blue Bic pen and begin. By the time I close the notebook, moonlight leaks through the tent and I angle on sleep, wondering if I will wake up with an erection. All right, well, thank you. That was chapter 18, a nice long chapter. Next week, we're going to get into 19, a little slimmer chapter. Yeah, the other ones are kind of slim. So anyway, hope you enjoyed your reading from this chapter of Babe in the Woods. We'll see you next week. Remember to watch my YouTube channel. Also, you're supposed to subscribe to it, so tell your friends about it. And Listen to the podcast. This was a long one. Hope you got your knitting, your crocheting, your woodworking in. As always, stay hydrated. See you next week. Bye-bye.